All right, Fleur, welcome. This is so
Thank
much
you.
fun.
Thanks for the invite and having me. I'm stoked.
Well, we were just talking, both of us are heading into finals tomorrow, and both of us have absolutely no idea how our teams are going to perform. So it's we feel pretty confident, but you never know what we're going to bring. So
Finals basketball, you just hope for the best.
you do.
Hopefully both good games, and hopefully the Flyers and Kings turn up, put their best
Mhm.
foot forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on that note, can you, I guess, just briefly just give us a sort of into how you got into coaching? I mean, obviously you had a great basketball career playing, but how did you get into coaching, and why did you take the pathway you did into the men's?
Yeah, when I was still playing, I started playing NBL 1 when I was like 14, 15. I was really young, and then while I was still playing, I got asked to coach like you do sometimes down at the local club, and started in coaching like the domestic teams, and then started coaching the rep teams. So I was still sort of coaching when I was playing. Tried to go WNBL pathway, got injured a few times, so that dream quickly dropped off. And so I sort of was working, playing NBL 1, and sort of discovered coaching. And then at the same time, I was asked to help out with state teams like WA Country and WA Metro teams, and had been in the women's program for a while. And then, yeah, coached a couple of under 16, under 18 rep teams for boys. And it was just something that, yeah, I guess sort of came really naturally to me while I was still playing. I was always really invested in giving back to the juniors and my club, and that was always, I guess, a real foundation of who I was, and particularly our club. And then it sort of transitioned into, after I finished playing, coaching the NBL 1 team. So
Yeah.
coaching the women, and then being able to coach the men. So I guess it wasn't really, I guess how I got back into men originally, like coaching in the men's league, is that a good friend of mine, I'd been out of coaching for a little while, and he had been appointed like the WA Metro under 16 head coach, but he was a first time head coach. He was quite young. He was probably like mid-20s. And
Mm.
Basketball WA had said to him, you need to take someone with experience with you to nationals. And I'd been to lots of nationals as a coach. And he rang me and said, got a favor. Do you want to come with me with this under 16 team? And it's funny, that actual WA Metro under 16 team actually had Luke Travers and Wani Swaka, who currently play in the NBL for Melbourne United and Wollongong. And so I coached them in 16s and 18s. And that's how I kind of got
Wow.
back into the male coaching, like was in WA Metro teams and NBL 1. And yes, I've probably been in men's basketball for like the last 10 years. It wasn't sort of a conscious, like, oh, I'm going to make the switch. It was just, they needed someone, I stepped in, and it just went from there.
They just took opportunities as they came up.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Have you ever, I guess, experienced people sort of going, oh, female coaching men or boys or anything like that? Have you ever had those moments?
It's so funny, Lauren. I have never had any
Wow.
single one of those moments. Like, I get asked all the time. Obviously, I guess I've carved a little bit of a niche, being a female in men's basketball in Australia, and I have never had an experience where I've had a player or another coach or anyone ever question. I think from a player's perspective, and you would probably know this, I think people can just tell right from the start if you're genuine and if you care about them. So I
Mm.
think the rest of it falls into place. I think players these days, it doesn't matter male, female, they just want someone who's cares
Yeah.
about them, is invested, and is genuine. And I've always just tried to be that. And so I think there's never been an issue. And same thing, I was really nervous walking in the doors at the Sydney Kings because, it wasn't NBL 1 anymore, it was NBL. And it was the pro. And I had no idea how these guys were going to be with me. And they were amazing right from the get-go. And I tried to come in a little softly the first couple of months, and just kind of get to know people, observe. Like, I don't like to come in too hot and heavy anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. So it was just building these relationships, but they were great. Like, right from the moment I stepped in, I'm taking them for workouts, getting to know them. And so, yeah, I'm very, very lucky. I've never had an experience like that. I don't know if it's a generational thing. And the way, young people are now far more accepting of, valuing diversity and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, I've never had that experience in my life.
And how has it been with the Kings the last few years? You've I mean, obviously you've gone from strength to strength and a lot of opportunities have come out of it, but how have you sort of felt being in your role and I guess being in the limelight a little bit as a woman, to be an assistant coach in the NBL?
It's the best. I say this all the time. I feel so fortunate. I don't know whether I just lucked out with the guys that I got and the opportunity I walked into, but they're the greatest. I have been welcomed with open arms by the entire organization. The guys are the best. I think it's funny. I do have a role sometimes, like you do sort of feel like you take on that maternal mother. Like I say all the time when I kind of yell at them and I get narky, that I turn into mean mum a little bit. Like I do disappointed mum very, very well with them. So, but I also know, I don't know, and originally I was like, oh, I don't know if like I want this sort of thing hanging over me, but I actually really enjoy that they do come to me if there's stuff going on or if they want to talk about things. And like, I hope that I'm a safe space for them. And that if
Yeah.
that's because I'm a female, then so be it. But I also think that's who I am as a person. So I've really embraced that role, as well as like, I mean, I'm the first one to talk absolute rubbish, laugh, like muck around, like that sort of stuff. So we just have so much fun together, like all the time. So it's been unreal. I think initially in the NBL, I really grappled with like, wow, this is a lot of attention. Like I've come in and people want to do interviews, and I wasn't used to that. I was like, this is really weird, like for an assistant coach to get this much attention. And but then I sort of just stepped into it and I thought, you know what, this is great. It's great for women. If I'm the face of this currently in the NBL, just like the women that went before me, then I'm really proud to be that person. So I've really just tried to own it rather than kind of fight it or feel embarrassed
Yeah.
about it. Like I've tried to just really own it, and hopefully that gives other women the space, or girls, or anyone, to think that, oh, well, there's someone that I can maybe aspire to be in that role and be like. And if she says I should go for it, maybe I should. So I've just tried to own it at the end of the day for the last few years.
And awesome. Doing a great job as well. Like it's
Thank you.
And I think what you said too about being that safe space for the athletes, I think it's so critical for assistant coaches to be able to have that relationship with the players and someone that they can go to, and be a place for them to share those things. Because more often than not, the coach is so, entrenched in what they've got to do for the next game, for the next practice. The assistant coaches are so critical to like the healthy functioning of a team. So good
Oh,
job.
I completely agree. And I say all the time, I get the best job because you get to be the good guy. Like you're still the person that has to deliver the messages, and, like you're still giving feedback and watching film and all those sort of things. But you also get to be the good guy a lot of the time, because you're the one that picks them up and keeps them positive when stuff is maybe going a little bit badly. And that's the greatest thing ever. You're not out on the sideline with all the pressure on you. You get to sit
Yeah.
back, best seats in the house. So again, I think I'm a bit of a realist in terms of, yeah, you get the good job. And I love that job. Like what being part of these guys' lives, like, it's been amazing just the last couple of years when you develop those personal relationships. Like, like I'm watching these guys get engaged and have babies. And like, that's actually really special to me, that I'm part of their life and their journey beyond what's going on with the Sydney Kings and on a basketball court. So I've really cherished that.
Yeah. Awesome. I sort of briefed you on the questions beforehand, but I want to move to last year and the opportunity to head over to the NBA G League with Maddie Nielsen, and the Spurs, and working alongside Victor Wembanyama. Jealous, very jealous. So is my 7-year-old son. How incredible of an opportunity was that?
It was amazing. I mean, you've been privy to seeing over there, like what the NBA is like, the resources and just the money, and it was absolutely mind blowing. But that at the same time, I found like in the Spurs environment, it was so real, and the staff was so lovely, and I really felt that kind of collaborative feel. And the Victor thing was like nothing else I've ever witnessed in my entire life. Like I've just been to Taylor Swift on Saturday night, so that was a different level of fandom. But the Victor thing was so real. He walked
Yeah.
in. He wasn't there the first couple of days, and then he came in for training camp for Summer League in San Antonio. And the media and the people outside the training facility, it was insane. And then that was basically everywhere we went. Like we were in Vegas, and we'd get back from a game, and there would just be hundreds of people outside the hotel trying to get signatures or see him. People would
Yeah.
chase the bus. Like, it was this kid and what he is dealing with at his age. I mean, you've been through that to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No.
that attention. But it was like, no, I don't understand how that kid is
Yeah.
coping with it. But he obviously has really good people around him. And I think the Spurs are kind of doing a really good job of, I guess, protecting him a little, and making sure that he's being looked after. He has a minder with him as well, like a close friend who's there. And he's also, you can just tell he's just such a nice human being. He
Yeah.
is the friendliest, nicest. He was so respectful to everyone on staff. Like, I was with him for probably, a week. He was so lovely to everyone, whether it was the interns, the coaches, his teammates. Yeah, he's very quiet, but he's just so respectful and so lovely. He's the biggest human being I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I can't tell you what it's
Yeah.
like. Like, I feel like doing this because that's what you're like when you're in his presence. Like, he is just, and the things that he did during the training camp, like the way he handles the ball, the way he can shoot it, you're just like, this is
The next
insane.
generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's,
It,
I think that next evolution of the basketballers that we're going to see, it's insane what they can do.
It really is, and you're just like, "This kid's 20." Like, this is
Crazy.
just like nothing else. So, yeah, the whole experience was amazing. Obviously, being in the NBA and, you get on, like, we got to go on, like, a chartered flight, so I'm trying so hard not to, like, fangirl and be like, "Oh my god, I'm on a private plane for the NBA. This is ridiculous." But yeah, it was a really cool experience, and the staff were amazing. I had the best 3 weeks with the staff at the Spurs. They were awesome. So, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was, like, really nervous thinking, like, I'm gonna have to, like, scout and cut film, and no, we were just there to, like, be involved, help out where we could, and they have so many staff. Like, I'm so used to at Kings, like, making sure people, you know what it's like, you make sure
Yeah.
people's got water or towels, and there's so many staff. I felt like I was just standing on the sideline clapping half the time,
Yeah,
like,
right.
yeah, it was incredible to watch, but so cool to get to experience it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, sort of in that, how do you deal with, I guess, when you've not seen eye to eye with athletes, when you've had athletes that have been harder to deal with, how do you deal with that as a coach?
So I think as I've gotten older, I've probably realized that you're not going to have the greatest of relationships with everyone. Like, that's part of life. I think when I was younger, I just would try to, like, push those relationships a little bit. And I think that, as I've gotten older, I've realized that, sometimes there might be a disconnect for whatever reason. But at the same time, before I get to that, I really try now that I've gotten older and a little bit wiser, and in coaching, I think I've become a far better listener, as
Okay.
I've gotten older. And I think a lot of the times with coaches, we talk so much at players, like, it's constant, our voice. And I think I've tried when there's maybe a disconnect, and I'm not communicating with this player well, or I feel like they're not really engaging with what we're saying or what we're trying to say. I try and discover a little bit more of the why, that maybe it's like on me that I'm not being clear enough. Maybe the way that I'm explaining things isn't right. Like, a lot of players learn differently and they take on messages differently. So I've certainly found over the years, just showing a player some film might not be the best way for them.
Yeah.
Like, it may not be the best way for them. Maybe, like, I've got a couple of guys at the Kings, and I know that I need to sometimes be on court and walk through stuff with them so that they can be on their feet and they understand where they're meant to be in those moments. So I think that's the thing I've kind of figured out along the way, that I need to find out a little bit more about that person as a human being, rather than just me throw so much information at them, because I know that they don't always respond to that. And sometimes it's not because they don't like me, but there's just a disconnect there in the way that they learn, in the way that I'm communicating. And then sometimes it might be just a little bit of a protective barrier, that they are embarrassed. They're not really sure what I'm talking about. So I've really tried to do a better job of listening and working out different ways to communicate with different athletes, rather than just assume that this person's painful and just shutting them out to begin
Yeah.
with. So that's sort of the ways that I've gone about it, particularly as I've gotten older, and not have to feel like I just have to talk constantly as the coach. I think that's the worst thing that you can do a lot of the time as a coach and a leader. I think the best leaders and the best coaches are the greatest listeners. So that's something I've really tried to employ as part of my communication strategies and connections with players.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess, would that be one of your biggest sort of takeouts as a coach, like where you are right now? Or have you got any other sort of great little insights you can share?
Yeah, like again, like I said to you, I think I've become a far better listener and understanding of people's why. When I'm trying to understand people, I think, when you're young and you're trying to make it, you think that you have to be the only voice in the room a lot of the time. And I've come a long way in coaching, and I think older and wiser, as we all are, as we learn along the way. And I think the more I've been in it, the more I've realized the power of collaboration and the power of giving athletes a voice. Like, I think when they can own it, and it's their values and the importance that we place on them, and they're sharing with us as much as we're sharing with them, I think that's the most powerful thing ever. And not even if it's just like at a pro level or semi-pro level, like adults, I think we can always learn off people and getting them to share. So
Mm.
I think that model of just, this is the coach and they're just going to spray information downwards at everyone underneath them, I think it's such an outdated way of learning, and I think it's an outdated way of sharing. So I think when you've got leaders in your team and you empower people to share and collaborate and have a voice, then I think it helps people get on the same page and move forward together. It's never going to be smooth sailing, but I also think being honest, sharing ideas, but also just listening to other people is something that I think I've picked up far greater along the way than when I was mid-20s, and you think you've got to be the only person speaking and the loudest person in the room. So that's sort of I guess my little thing that I'd share that I've learned along the journey.
Yeah, no, and I think that's true in life. I think the greatest leaders are the ones that are able to listen, to be able to take a back seat and let other people speak up and use their voice. And I think that's such a really good message to share. Um, okay, another question on that, not so much, but more about yourself. But how do you reflect and evaluate your performance as a coach? Is it through game tape? Is it like just sitting back and thinking about how you've performed during a game? Or is it getting feedback, mentors, things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a combination of both. Like, obviously during a game or even our trainings, I get immediate feedback with how I'm going. Like, I drew up an ATO, a timeout, the other day, and so we coach our scrimmage. Mood like gets Daniel Kicken and I to kind of lead the scrimmages and our coaches. So he's really good at empowering his assistants for that. And I drew up an ATO the other day. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. And so I got immediate feedback when we turned it over in the sideline out of bounds, and I was like, that was atrocious. What was I thinking? So I think you get immediate feedback in the moment how you go. And when I reflected back on it, I thought, I don't think I was very clear in my instructions of what I wanted. So I reflected on the way I delivered the message in the timeout. So there's always that immediate feedback. And we film training a lot of the time. So I find that's a really useful tool if you've got the means and resources to be able to reflect on how you're going and the delivering of drills. I think the other thing is really helpful is that I meet with Mahmood, our head coach, and I did the same thing with Chase. Like, we have a meeting once a month and we share feedback back and forth about how I'm going with Scout. So they'll obviously watch me deliver Scout and they'll give feedback on that, or if I'm running drills, they'll give feedback and they'll take feedback from me as well. And I think the other thing is, Luke Longley has been really useful for me in terms of giving me feedback. He comes to our training sessions a lot. He's around a lot. So he will often share with me when I'm taking something or I'm doing something with the players, how I go with it, like the good, the bad, things I could improve on. So I find that really helpful as well. So, we talk about players receiving feedback all the time. Like, we talk about the person receiving the feedback has to be open to the feedback. We talk about that a lot with our players receiving it. But I think it's exactly the same with coaches as well. Like, I think you have to be willing, like we talk about players being coachable, so do you. You have to be able to be willing to take on that feedback, and particularly for your areas of growth. So those are the main ways that I kind of get feedback on how I'm going and reflect on what I'm doing.
Luke Longley's not a bad sort of mentor person to have giving you feedback, because I've worked with him a little bit over the years, but especially when I was playing, and he was around the boomers, just such a level head and an incredibly intelligent head as well to have in basketball. So
He is.
he's not
It's
bad to
funny.
have around the
So
court.
we actually share an apartment when he's in Sydney. So he stays with me. So it's so great. Like obviously he's a really good friend of mine. And it's funny, Lauren, he obviously was at your game last when you played in Sydney, and I showed him the photo of you two hugging after the game. He's like, "Can you screenshot and send that to me? Because I'm going to send it to Lauren." I'm like, "Okay, no worries." So he was so stoked with that photo. But he's just such a good human being. Like all he wants for people, he wants the best for them. He invests in people. So I think when you surround yourself with those people, good things happen. So yeah, we were just talking about that the other week.
Look, you've been around both women's and men's basketball. I mean, obviously, with the Kings and Flames, you're sort of, front and center there. But what what sort of difference have you seen in resources? And this is an interesting one because you have been over the NBA, so you've sort of seen what they've got over there. But there's still such a big gap between the men's game and the women's game. I know hoops, capital hoops.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Are doing their best to try and bridge that gap, as are other organisations in Australia, but it's there's still a very big gap there. In your mind, what do you sort of see being the biggest thing?
I completely agree with you. And I mean, I was assistant for the Perth Lynx. I'm going to go it was like 19 years ago. This is how old I am, how
Was when I was
embarrassing I'm
playing.
revealing my age here. Yeah, it was like 2005, I think. It was a long time ago. So I do compare it to then. I think we have grown. We've come a long way, I think, in women's basketball. But you're right, there's still such a deficit. And I know Hoops Capital really are trying to bridge that with the Kings and the Flames and pour more resources into women's basketball. But I'm exactly with you. I think that we can't expect professionalisms from our professional athlete if we don't invest the resources and money that they require to be professional athletes. Like when you half-ass something and you give it half the time and half the resources, then you're going to get, half the results, like we know that we have to invest in it to see the results. And there's been other women's sports at the moment that are heavily investing in their female athletes. And as a result, the product is expanding and going through the roof. And I think I particularly feel with the WNBL, because I think the product for the WNBL has been good for a long, long, long time. And I think basketball in particular has lagged behind other sports and investing in that product, whether it's from corporate partners, however they want to do it. So that for me is probably the biggest issue. And I really hope that changes, because I think particularly I feel for the WNBL because I think the product has been great for a long, long time. Like you've played in it. It's an amazing league with incredible players, but yet the resources and support into that league has not matched the talent level and the commitment of the athletes. So for me, that's a huge issue in women's sport. And I think something that hopefully we're seeing changes, but for me, I think basketball's really lagged behind in that, if I'm honest. And I'd love to see far more investment in athletes and in the WNBL and our female basketballers who have been, I mean, let's be honest, the Opals have been the absolute pinnacle of women's sport in this country for a sustained period of time. And they are deserving of those resources and support structures. So that's my little 2 cents on that particular issue.
No, you're 100% right. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, considering the WNBL has been around as long as it has been, and it has been as successful, and with the Opals and everything, it's time for more investment. There's no doubt.
Completely agree with you.
You're the first woman to win an NBL championship ring. How long do you think it will be until we see another female do that?
Oh goodness, I hope it's not that long. I mean, I'm leaving this after
I
this
know.
season, so I think rather than I guess winning a championship, although I'd love that, I just want clubs to hopefully give other females a go on their coaching staff. That's what. Hopefully, there's not a gap again of 5-10 years till we see another female coaching in the NBL. I really hope it happens as soon as I leave, if I'm honest. Hopefully that more of these NBL clubs are open to the idea of interviewing and looking at women to take on roles in their coaching staff. So I'm hopeful, Lauren, that it won't be a long, long time. I guess I'm trying to think positively that there will be changes in the NBL in terms of, the support for women and being ready to add some diversity to their coaching staff.
Absolutely, because we do contribute a lot.
Absolutely.
We know a lot about the game. I'd say also too, lastly, and I think what you've talked about already is, taking opportunities as they come and not being afraid to put your foot, like to put your best foot out there and go for it. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've got from this. But what advice would you have for women out there who are interested in coaching boys or men, in the future?
Again, like you've just talked about, just go for it. Like, I think so much of the time we hold ourselves back because we think, I don't know enough. Like, I mean, I
Mm,
walked in the doors at the Sydney Kings and I'm like, I've never coached pro men in my entire life. Like, how I've got no idea if I know enough. But I think you never know enough. Like, that's part of life. You're always
right.
learning and growing and getting better. It's not the knowing. Like, I think, you have a foundation and you're just seeking to get better. I think that if you want to go and coach in men's or boys basketball, whatever direction, put yourself out there. Like, go and throw your hat in the ring. And what you don't know, you'll learn along the way. And I think what I've found in coaching in men's and boys is, like all athletes, if you're a person that is happy to invest in people, care about people, that is all they are after. Like, there's a quote that talks about people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I've found that so true working in both sides of basketball, men and women's
Yeah.
sides. And I think that if that's who you are and that's where you want to go, that's all people care about. Like, the X's and O's take care of itself. You learn that with different coaches and different opportunities. So I would say don't let fear hold you back from going into that. I had a friend actually who's in Geelong. We played NBL one together, and she said to me, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. I'm going to be assistant coach for our under 18 rep boys team." And I'm like, "Mate, you're going to be great. Like, you're really good." And she messaged me and she goes, "I love it. It is so great." She said, "These
Yeah.
boys are so much fun." So I'm so glad she did it, because she was so nervous about it. She got asked to do it. And she said, like, "Fleur, I've never coached in boys basketball. I'm like really nervous." And I'm like, "Do it. You'll be great." And she's loving it. So I just think that sort of thing, like, and I also think people surprise themselves. You know more than what you think. Like, we always sort of think that, like, that we don't know enough, and we kind of downplay what we know. I don't know if it's a female thing, but you actually know more than what you think. And what you don't know, X's and O's, your experiences in life as a
Mm.
female, all these different areas. It could be your job, your profession, all those skill sets are helpful in whatever you do. So I think just pigeonholing yourself into one thing, or not thinking that you know enough, is so not true. And we just need to change that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think perception as well, like women are often afraid of that perception piece, which is why for me, I just want to thank you for, being one of the first women in Australia to break that down. It's incredible what you've done here, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind.
No, it's amazing. I'm going to move quickly before we open it up to the floor. And please, like I said, put your questions into the chat box so that we can come straight to you after we finish. I do want to break this new move down though. You've recently been hired as the assistant general manager of the Phoenix Mercury. So you're actually not coaching, you're heading into an administrative role in a women's WNBA team, which, I mean, look, it's awesome. It's incredible. But why? Why are you doing
Yeah.
it?
It's really interesting. So I got offered the opportunity to go and work for the Mercury, and I sort of made the decision to go and work in the front office because I was really interested in diversifying my skill set. So obviously now I've got the coaching background. Really lucky that I've worked closely with our front office at Hoops Capital
Yep.
for the last 3 years. And I just thought the opportunity to diversify my skill set and go and work in the front office in the assistant GM role. But my biggest thing was, and I've been asked this a lot, my number one concern was, I'm going to lose contact with players. That's my favorite part, like these relationships. And I actually spoke to Adam Capel, my friend who works for the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA. And I was like, and he was like, "This is such an awesome opportunity." And I said, "Yeah, but my favorite part is the player relationships. Like, that's the best part." And he's like, and he sort of reassured me that as assistant GM, I wouldn't lose that. Like, club
Yeah.
officers are way more now, the assistant GMs in particular are way more invested with those relationships with the players. So that's probably the reason that I was swayed as well, because I didn't
Yeah.
want to lose that, Lauren. That's my favorite part. So I talked to a lot of people like Adam and things, and I thought, well, I'm going to go get that experience. And obviously, there's a lot of people over in America that do both, that go coaching, front office, and then go back to coaching. So for me, I was like, this is a really cool experience to see what I actually prefer, go and learn some new skill sets, apply my trade within the front office, then hopefully make a decision whether I come back out and go back out on the coaching floor, or maybe I stay on that side of it. So it was purely made from that perspective to add some diversity to different skills. And we'll see what happens. I have no idea how this is going to pan
You
out.
could end up on a WNBA bench being a head coach,
There you
or
go.
in the NBA, you know.
And that's what people have said to me, and it's funny, like even the ownership group of the Sydney Kings, they said, well, you know where you're coming when you want to come back to Australia. So I think it's nice to know and have options, I guess. And I think for me, yeah, the opportunity, whilst I'm really scared and nervous about the move to America, and going to live over there and sort of see what it's like, I am excited to try it and see what happens. Luke's kind of says to me all the time, life's an adventure, you'll figure it out. So I'm just going to take the leap
Absolutely.
and see what happens.
Yeah, good for you. That's incredible. No, congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we'll all be watching and hoping we get you back here. Obviously, we want to keep you here in Australia, but I think the world is definitely your oyster at this point. So
Thank you.
yes. All right. Well, look, we'll open it up to the floor now. There is actually no questions. We can keep chatting along. Please put some questions in here if you've got questions for Fleur. You've been amazing. I think just having these conversations as well is it's so important. How did you feel jumping from junior coach to NB1 SBL? That's a good question.
Oh, yeah. So I actually felt really comfortable, I think, because I'd played NBL one. So I don't know if that added a layer of comfortability. And I actually coached NBL one, and it was quite weird, the transition, because I was playing with a lot of those girls and I had transitioned to coaching them. And I player coach one season, which was the worst thing I ever did. I was horrendous at it. I look back on that and I'm like, I was so bad at that. That's my reflection on that experience. But I think the junior coaching into NBL one, because I'd been to nationals and worked in that sort of high performance environment as well, it is different because you're dealing with adolescents, and then obviously you're going to grown men and grown women. I think my background in teaching helps me a lot as well. So I was a university professor as well. So I've had a lot of experience teaching young people and working with obviously adults, like mature age students, teenagers. So I think that diversity of experience has held me in quite good stead from jumping from juniors to seniors. And then my background in playing, having those relationships with adult, men and women. I actually found the transition not too bad. I think being able to go from coaching junior reps to maybe going to a high performance environment and being involved in state teams is a really good pathway to go. And then obviously getting yourself onto an NBL one bench, whether that's as like second, third assistants, and then kind of moving up, I think that makes the transition really easy.
What's your favorite aspect of the game to coach?
Oh, I don't know if mean either side of the floor. My favorite aspect of the game to coach is definitely, like at the Kings, the relationships with the players, like spending time with the players one-on-one, whether it's showing film, having coffee, like those things are by far and away my favorite part of just sitting down at dinners. Like it's the best. If I had to, so I don't know if that answers your question about my, like running workouts, like individual workouts. Like I love that. I think that's the greatest way to connect, when it's just me and, like, whether it's Sean Bruce, Angus Glover, DJ Hogue, like it's the best, laughing, talking, like getting the work in. That for me is my favorite part. Favorite part of the game to coach is obviously game day. I mean, does anyone, training, like we do it, but everyone's up for game day. It's by far and away the best day of the week. So I think walking out for game day is the greatest. And when you're in it, trying to figure it out, like you often get lost in the moment. This year with us, I'm more on our offensive side of the ball, which is good, because have you seen how bad the Sydney Kings have been defensively this year? So, but I probably do gravitate to watching our defense probably a little bit more. I'm probably more that way inclined, but Mood's been really good at challenging me this year to look at our offense and looking at different ways to attack different defenses. So that's been a really cool part of my job this year as well.
Awesome. And bigs, littles.
Yeah,
meetings?
so I generally work with our wings, like our 3/4. The last couple of years with our like we have like little groups that we work with, like our vitamin guys, we call them. So I've generally had like mind you, like I had Xavier Cooks the last 2 years, DJ Vasiljevic,
Yeah.
Ian Clark, the place woman, I've had Wani Swaka, Justin Simon. So I generally have a lot of our wings. And if I take stuff at training, like I'll have Angus Glover, Alex Tui, Jalen Galloway, DJ Hogue, like yeah, you're sort of working in those. So generally the wings is who I work with a
Very
lot.
cool.
Yeah. So because we've got Daniel Kicken on staff, so he's amazing with the bigs. Like I've learned so much watching Kicks. Obviously, because he played for Australia
Yeah.
in the NBL, watching him with the bigs. Like it'd like be watching you, Lauren, work with people, like all the stuff you guys have learned. And then we had Kevin Lish before that. So watching Kev work with the guards, so cool. Like it's been awesome learning off those guys.
Awesome. We sort of touched on this, but how much will you be dealing with the athletes in your new role?
Yeah, I'm hopeful a lot. I haven't been told sort of specifically, but I think my understanding is obviously you are touching base with the athletes, the operations day to day, making sure they're okay. You're also involved in the recruitment. You're going to look at scout and meet with potential players, whether that's college players or people out here in the WNBL. So I'm hoping there'll still be a fair bit of interaction with the day to day, but also on the scouting and recruitment and
Yeah.
getting to know players that might want to come and play for Phoenix.
And they're pretty big roles too. Like once you head into the NBA as well, like, there's a lot of ex-players that are doing that right now, and it's pretty good. Like it's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay. What have you learnt coaching males that might mean you do something differently to coaching women? So what's some differences between coaching men and women?
What are some differences? I found, and this may have changed a little bit, I find guys get over stuff a little bit quicker than females in my experience. So something will happen at practice. My very first year with the Kings, something will happen at practice, and I was like, oh goodness, like it's gotten fiery. And they'll be over it 30 seconds later. And I'm like, oh, in my experience with women, this might have gone for a couple of days and we might have had
Couple of
to,
weeks.
yeah, we might have had to kind of had a couple of team meetings to sort through
Yeah.
this. Whereas boys
Yeah.
are quite simple. I don't want to say that in a bad way, but they do get over stuff probably a little
Yeah.
bit quicker. So that's probably one of the things that I've noticed. I think one of the misconceptions about men as well is that they're all bravado, and they are, don't get me wrong. But what I found underneath it all is that they are like, honestly, they just want someone to love and support them like anything else. They go through what you see on TV, and again, I think probably boys probably do a more of a job of putting on that face, whereas I think underneath it all, like I get to see it the day in day out. Like they need someone to pick them up on the good days and the bad days, and I think that was probably a misconception I had coming in, that they're all just going to like do their own thing, be really too cool for it, and they're so not like that. Like
Mm.
they need that kind of love and support, which is my favorite part, like just checking in, making sure they're okay, and the laughs, and like, yeah, between the good and the bad, yeah, it's a lot of an act a lot of the time, I think you
Yeah,
find.
right.
Yep.
That's funny. I was talking to Mike Tebow a couple of weeks ago, and he said the same thing. He was
Yep.
just like, because he'd coached in the NBA and then into the WNBA, and he's like, girls, just hold on to things a
Yep.
little bit longer.
Yep, they do. They do. So yeah, I do. I laugh about that all the time. I'm like, we'd be into a 3-week team meeting right now if this was,
Yeah,
yeah. Whereas the boys will like have a scuffle or it gets fiery, and then bang, 30 seconds later, they're over it. It's all good. It's all love again. So it's
yeah,
fine.
right. That's funny. What advice would you give to someone who wants to go to a head coach role from an assistant coach role?
I think just being able to put yourself in that position. So if you're currently an assistant coach, maybe in the NBL 1, look at opportunities maybe in the grade below that to gain head coaching experience. And I think as well, making sure that if you're working with someone as a head coach, that you ask them for opportunities to head coach. Like at our practices all the time, Mahmood never coaches the scrimmage. It's always Kicks and I taking either team and coaching the scrimmages. So that's a really cool opportunity to getting to head coach, like in those moments. And I think like for me, if I wanted to pursue the head coaching, I guess, pathway, what I would have done is probably taken on an NBL 1 role to really upskill myself or get back in the game for head coaching, because It's so much different when you're assistant coach and then you've got to go into that head coaching role. So I think gaining that experience and that confidence, the only way to do that is by doing it. So I think being able to do those, gain those different experiences with what you're currently doing, or whether you throw yourself into an opportunity to go and be a head coach, whether you think you're ready or not. I mean, are you ever ready? Never. I think that all the time.
Thank
Just
you
yeah,
much.
just throw yourself into it. So that would be my advice, I think, for someone looking for those opportunities.
Yeah. Who are your favorite coaches to watch, learn from, past and present?
Oh, goodness me, good question. Um, I really like in the WNBA, I really like some of the stuff that like Becky Hammond's running with the Aces. I really like some of their stuff. I kind of, it's funny when you're like in coaching as well, you look at like timeouts and things that people are running and sets. So you get really into those sort of things. I got to meet Greg Popovich when I was over in America,
Yeah,
and I just
awesome.
fangirled. That's like my ultimate
Mm,
basketball moment. So that was very, very cool. I think, over in the NBL, I've been really lucky. I think Chase ran some unbelievable stuff. I learned so much of him. And same as Mahmood, they run some really cool stuff. So I've been so fortunate to work under two coaches that I think have run some unbelievably cool stuff that I've learnt off. And yeah, I think just from that perspective, really like watching the WNBA. Like I really watched a lot of the Aces Liberty Grand Final Series last
yeah,
year, Championship Series. And it was so cool watching Sandy and Becky go back and forth, like
God, I
the
know.
adjustments and what each of them would do to target different matchups. And so for me, that was really cool to watch. So I'm actually really excited to go over and watch that in person now as well. So they're just a few that I could probably list that I've kind of watched really closely, particularly over the last 2 years.
Yeah, cool. What are some tips in developing a good relationship with the head coach, and the way that just to make sure you're contributing?
Yeah, I think that building kind of trust and rapport with the head coach is really critical, and I think the way that you do that is again, I think being a really good listener. Sometimes the head coach just needs someone to talk to. So I've the last 2 years I've spent a lot of time just if Muck Moon and Chase just need an ear, they give me a call and we sit on the phone and chat through things. So I think being able to listen, I think picking your moments to offer advice, like sometimes in the heat of a game they've called a timeout. They probably know what they want to say. You going up with 15 different ideas is probably not the opportune time to offer those things. I think being able to understand how they operate, when to offer advice, when to maybe sit back and listen. And I think you build trust by echoing consistent messages as an assistant coach. So I think where teams fall apart is when assistant coaches kind of go a little bit rogue and say their own thing and do their own thing. I think if a team's going to go anywhere, you need a consistent message about the style of play and who we want to be and what we're about.
Mhm.
But then also, you build that really nice relationship with the players. So it's that sort of
Yeah,
balance that I think I've figured out, and it's understanding people, right? Like Chase was different to Mahmood, so it's figuring out how they like to work, when they like feedback. Like Mood is much more come up to me in games and like grab me. Like if you've got something, I want you to tell me. Whereas Chase is like, I need to focus on it. I need you to tell me at this particular time. So it's just figuring that out, I think, with different
yeah,
personalities and how that works. But for me, it's always been about your job is to support the players and to support the head coach. That is your job as the assistant coach. And I think anything else is falls by the wayside because that is your number one job to make sure your players and your head coach feel supportive and you're doing everything you can to make sure that they know that.
mm, I love that. I've been on teams as an athlete where that hasn't been the case,
Mm,
and it's actually just torn teams apart. So you're right, assistant coaches, their role, like I said before, is so critical in the cohesiveness of the team, and also for the coach. The coach needs you.
for sure, absolutely. And I think you're sometimes the voice as well. Like if a player's struggling, to be that because they can't say it to the head coach to go and say
Yeah.
like, "Hey, this player's struggling." Like, and sometimes it's almost easier coming from the assistant coach, just saying like, "This player needs a little bit more love today." Like they're struggling a little bit. Like, and I think that's the great part about being the assistant coach that you can be that messenger, as well as being the consistency, as you said, Loz. Like, making sure everyone feels supportive, because that's your job.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you learned coaching the Kings that you think might help with Mercury women?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what I've learned from coaching the Kings is I think different styles. I've learned so much the last 3 years working in the NBL. Like, my basketball knowledge has expanded. I can't even describe to you. I think working with pro athletes, working with different personalities, I think individual player development is a huge focus in the NBL. Chase was huge on that. So I really upskilled in that, how I worked with players individually. So I think that's probably a huge part of what I've learned that I can take over. I think the analytics side, like working in pro sport, far more focused in analytics than I was in the NBL and anything else. So I think particularly going over to the WNBA, having that analytics knowledge and understanding how that works to make teams more successful without living and dying by the data, but how it fits with players. So I think that's something that I've learned. I think roster construction will be really helpful because I've been so the good thing about the NBL is that whilst we're small and it's a small staff, you get so much more of a voice and get to do more things. Like you go to the NBA, I was talking to someone when I was over there for Summer League and they were like, yeah, it's great having all these resources and staff, but instead of 4 people trying to make a decision, there's 44 people trying to make a decision. So I think for me, like I feel so lucky that I've been part of this pro league, but having such a voice in everything that we do. So I feel really confident. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'll take with it, that I've learned so much knowledge wise, X's and O's, style of play, scouting, picking apart teams' defenses, offense, all the rest of it. So I think that will be helpful, but also just confidence wise in having a voice and being able to speak up and say what I think when I get asked about things.
Yeah, awesome. A couple more questions here. So, what are the key skills do you think we need to arm young girls, ladies, with to get to the next level?
I think just being supported and I think allowing people enough time to grow. I think at the moment we expect things to happen so quickly and it doesn't happen like that. You know, growth is just ongoing. And for me, I think the biggest thing for young girls is feeling confident and supported in what they're doing. I think at the first sign of we're so afraid of failing. We are so afraid of failing. And when we do fail, our initial reaction is to think, I'm not good at this. I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, the amount of times I do stuff wrong with the Kings, like I said, I drew up the worst ATL of all time the other day. But I think failure is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's teaching young girls how to deal with that failure as a growth
Yeah,
opportunity, learning from it, and not to lose confidence. I think for me, that's the biggest thing that we need to do to empower young girls because I know that there's enough pressure in society and things coming at them from all different angles that the slightest sign of things feeling I'm not good enough or I failed at this, they just want to withdraw from it. And I think we've got to reshape how we support girls and how we get girls to view themselves when things go badly because they're going to, and I think that that's part of the fun in life is learning and getting stuff wrong sometimes. And when you get it right, it's the most beautiful feeling. But I think it's being able to handle that adversity and staying confident when things maybe don't go to plan.
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. That resilience training as well, like just giving them the confidence to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to, I guess, keep moving forward. Don't let it hold you back.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
completely
often,
agree.
yeah, we learn it too late. I feel like young girls, they learn it too late. So
Yeah,
we're definitely trying to fix that.
I love that. I love that.
Um, Sarah, okay, firstly, congrats, Fleur, on this new role. It's not often we hear about admin role opportunities, especially at this level. So, as an admin person, to see how your role goes is really exciting. I guess my question is to both you and LJ, is there an opportunity in 6 months or so to do a follow-up session and to see how you're going? So, I thought, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problems. I'm more than happy to do that. And I can come and spill all the beans of what it's like working in the WNBA front office. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. No problems.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we'd love to obviously continue to follow everything that you're doing. I think it's incredible. You know, just I think that the fact that you are so diverse in all of your different skill sets and just taking opportunities as they come because you've given yourself the the opportunity to do it by diversifying and doing everything that you've done. So just congratulations
Thank you.
on everything and thank you so much for joining us today. What a pleasure you've been. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Loz, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on and your questions. Honestly, I love doing the Q&A. Like, it's so great swapping ideas and sharing stories. It's the best. So, Lauren, thank you so much for the invite.
Oh,
Good
thank
luck
you.
tomorrow night. Like,
Yeah, you too.
let's hope for 2 wins. But thanks so much, everyone, for jumping on. And yeah, hopefully I get to see you all at some point along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll try and catch up with you fairly soon.
For sure.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining in. This will be up probably next week online on She Hoops. And yeah, go Fleur.
Thanks, Loz. You too. Good luck tomorrow. See you, everyone.
See ya.